Continuing on with our 3D goodness, we're going to make a 3D cube, and that's going to help us work with orchestrating layers in a 3D environment. It's kind of getting a handle on things like position, rotation. It's also a really good exercise just in thinking about your moves in more calculated ways. So the very last comp in the 3D Basics folder is the cube, comp 3. What I've done is I've made 6 solids, each with a different color, and they're just in the comp right now. And what we're going to do together is we're going to turn this into a cube. So first thing we need to do is just enable 3D for all of our layers. And something we should know about this cube is that each face or wall or whatever you want to consider these guys, these solids, they're each 100 by 100 pixels. So that number is going to come in pretty handy as we try to calculate the moving or shifting through space of these layers. So I'm just going to start with the front. And the front is on the bottom of the layer hierarchy right now, and we don't see it because right now all of these layers have the same position. And the way that After Effects draws things is it gives the topmost layer dominance over what's underneath it, as long as it's a situation where they all share the same space. So I'm going to take the front, I'm going to access my position by hitting P, and I'm going to move it toward the camera 50 pixels. Right now my Z value is at 0, so I'm going to say toward the camera will be a negative and then 50. So why am I going 50? Well, first, before I even answer that, look at that. The solid is now the visual dominant item in our timeline or in our comp. So that's because I just moved it closer to the camera. So now finally After Effects has something to consider being a top priority as far as what to draw first, because it's closer to the camera. So 50 comes from half of 100. So if you would think about it, I'm going to move my front layer 50 pixels toward the camera. And I'm going to take the back layer, I'm going to move it 50 pixels away from the camera. So a positive 50 is going to push it back. And already I can see that the little dots and handles around the edges are a little bit different in how they look. This one's closer to us, so it's bigger. That one's further away, so it's smaller. Those being all set and done put us in a position where we can now manage the top and the bottom. So the bottom is still a layer that is facing toward us right now, and if it needs to be a bottom, we need to have it rotated. So I'm going to access my rotation. I know that if I'm going to have it flip downwards and be like a floor, I need to rotate on my x-axis. So I'm going to go a negative 90. Nope, I'm going to go positive 90. Sorry. Positive on the x. That just, I like to have my arrows pointing outwards on this exercise instead of having them all point inwards. It just makes a little bit more sense. So now my bottom is rotated so that it actually is a floor-like layer. But I need to move it now in Y so that it actually resides at the bottom of this cube. So if I look at my Y value, it's not as easy anymore as the Z, which started off as a 0 value. Now my Y value at the center of the screen is 243. And that's because it's 486 divided by 2, 486 being the height of our composition. So this, our center point is 243. I need to add 50 pixels to this. And here's a really cool thing that After Effects allows us to do. It allows us to do math in the little number fields. So I just highlight that. I'm just going to type in plus 50 and hit return, and it just pushes that layer down. It adds 50 to that previous existing value, and it's now at the bottom of where my cube should be. I'm going to do the same thing with the top. Well, actually the opposite. Same thing. I'm going to rotate it on my X, the negative 90. So the arrow is pointing up, and I'm going to have to remove 50 from this value since the top is 0 and we're here at 243. Here's the tricky thing about doing math in these number fields in After Effects. You have to really do it a very odd way. You have to say you want to add, so plus a minus 50, because if I just typed in negative 50, it would think that I mean I want it to go to the negative 50 coordinate for the Y, which would be up above my composition frame, 50 pixels. So you have to do plus minus, which takes a little while to get used to, but if we're starting early doing it, then you'll get used to it. So then the right is going to need a rotation change on the Y-axis of negative 90, not 90. And then we're going to have to add 50 pixels to the X value. So I'll just select that and do plus 50. It moves right over for me. And then the left guy, rotation on the Y, we'll do 90. And get our position value for X, and we have to subtract 50. So I'm going to do plus minus 50. And it sucks it right over to the edge here. Now it's hard to tell at our active camera view what exactly is going on here. So maybe I'll just take a look at custom view 1 real quick, and you go, oh, cool, look at that. For some reason it reminds me of a Nintendo GameCube logo. So we have a cube, and this cube is currently just sitting in the middle of space facing us. And the white layer is what's facing us first here. So you could, in order to get to moving it and keeping it all together, you could think about, defining one of the walls as a parent, so that 5 layers all have a parent of the other, maybe the front wall, whatever chosen in the parent column. But in this situation, I like to remind us about the null object. The null object is going to be our hero here, and we're going to start using it more and more as you get advanced in our motion graphics world. So this null 2, I'm going to rename it cube control, just so I can identify. That says cubed, not cube. Cube control. Cube control needs to be enabled in 3D, and currently it sits at the center of everything. So it's center Y, center X, and then it's at 0Z, which means the way that we've built this cube and had the walls come toward us and away from us and to the sides and up and down, that this cube control null layers is dead center of our cube. Kind of convenient. We can now grab all of our other layers and we can assign the cube control as the parent, and here it verifies that in our parent column. They're all set to go to the cube control. And now I could open something like rotation for the cube control. I could rotate my X, and you can see the cube start to rotate, kind of tumble toward us. I could rotate the Y, and you can see it's sort of spinning from side to side. And if I rotate the Z, then it's really not that exciting, but over time. If I was to do something over time, I could keyframe X and Y. Let's go over like 2 seconds. I could have it start to rotate this way and maybe give a little bit of counter spin, and you end up with a really kind of a neat way to see that there's actually some volume going on here. You've created a cube. So this is a really good exercise, like I said, just in getting used to arranging things in space and thinking about relationships, not just between layers, but spatially between layers, and how different values are going to actually be pretty important to think, in spatial terms, especially if you're trying to create a room or some sort of object. So this is a very primitive way to make a cube. If you needed a cube, you would usually not go to After Effects and make this. You'd go to a 3D program and do it. But since After Effects has this capability of dealing with the 3D space, then we can totally make up shapes. It's kind of fun. So there's the creation of the cube. Practice that, get used to it. Try to make maybe even a more complex shape, something that could be like a triangle or a something like a soccer ball or something. Okay, all right, and we'll see you in the next video.